very different Midwestern white men took the stage in New York City for the first and only vice presidential debate of this cycle and the final debate overall, now that Trump has rejected calls for another debate between himself and Kamala Harris. No more baiting in 2024.
And I think at this point, we're probably better off for it.
I'm good. With the election just 5 weeks away, the debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz served as the last opportunity for these two campaigns to lay out their differences side by side for the people out there who are still somehow undecided.
Yeah.
And it was very boring. And that's not to say it was a bad debate. It's just that compared to every debate featuring Trump himself, the VP debate was mostly civil and it mostly stuck to the issues.
Yeah.
Ugh. This is what the people wanted, right?
It did remind me of pre-Trump politics, where
boring.
People weren't as engaged, probably not as great, but that's because it was just so boring for the most part.
Yeah. And if you were hoping that J.D. Vance would try and do his best Trump impression, you were sorely disappointed. And Vance instead did what he was hired to do, which is put a sensible, relatable, soft-spoken sheen on a radical fascist agenda.
Yeah, it's called sane washing. And a lot of people have been doing that dirty work for Trump. A lot of media companies have been doing that dirty work for Trump. But Vance did a pretty good job at doing it last night by putting forth policy positions that are nightmarish. Like solving the housing crisis by getting rid of immigrants.
Got to deport like 20 million people.
And then
in fact, that's like, if we deport the 20 million, all of your problems will go away.
And then opening up federal lands like the national parks to be able to build housing on or some such like that. And the best critique I saw of that was, I'm pretty sure that recent immigrants to this country aren't really battling someone out in the Atlanta suburbs for a $1.2 million McMansion. But, maybe that is happening.
I would say that our housing problems are a little more nuanced.
I would say that too.
There's not enough land.
Yes, exactly. Now, that's not to say that Vance won the debate. Post-debate polling reflects a pretty even split. And this debate also got significantly smaller viewership than the 2020 VP debate. So it was boring and it was also pretty pointless. And by the way, it's the postseason, baby. The Braves and the Padres were playing, and I wouldn't hold it against you if you were watching postseason baseball instead.
Honey, change the channel.
So Krang T. Nelson was largely correct when he wrote, "Watching the VP debate in any election year is time you will never get back. Time you could be using to learn a cool new skill. You could learn how to make pottery. You could make weird little bowls and shit.
Yeah, he was right.
Or you can watch postseason baseball. It's the wild card, baby." Now, unfortunately, people like you depend on us to watch this crap and to tell you all about it. So that's what we did. Our sacrifice is your gain. The debate did manage to cover a lot of different issues, including climate change, thanks to its relevance to the country's latest horrific natural disaster. And we at least got Vance on the record doing everything he could to dodge answering whether or not he thinks climate change is a hoax, and actually being mostly successful at dodging it, aside from calling climate change weird science at one point.
Yeah, there was a couple times where they really got him, where he's just like, "Oh fuck, I'm not gonna sound sane and sensible if I actually do straight up agree with what Trump said. So I'm gonna duck and dive."
He definitely talked around a lot of topics. He invented people out of thin air to use as examples for things that sometimes aren't even happening. It was bizarre, but that's the general consensus that I got and that I saw a lot online, was that he was a very successful smooth talker, though he was putting out lies and falsehoods.
Yeah.
And
he's a politician. He reminded me a lot of like Paul Ryan.
And Tim Walz, on the other hand, not as good of a debater. Honestly, he just wasn't as good
have that experience, and he also doesn't have the sociopath gene that makes you good at
yes but he did call him out on a couple notes that it felt good. He got him. He also had a couple flubs that were extremely unfortunate.
So climate change is obviously one of the issues where the two parties are most at odds, at least in terms of rhetoric. But then there's issues like Israel, where the differences are much, much smaller, which is a shame, considering support for U.S. aid to Israel continues to be on the decline. And it's looking more and more like Israel really wants things to spill over into a much larger regional war that, of course, increases the likelihood of more direct U.S. involvement than just giving away bombs.
What? You spent a year sending us a bunch of weapons and ammunition. We're going to use it.
Dad! On the question of whether they would support a preemptive strike by Israel against Iran, which
what a question to open up the debate with, like just bloodthirsty from the start.
Yeah, so do you support World War III? Anyway, Vance, after making a big stink about how things were so peaceful under Trump, and
which was not true.
Yeah, Vance immediately replied, actually, quote, it's up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. So yes, I would. He didn't say yes, but yes, he would support Israel doing a preemptive strike on Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Walls managed to dodge that question. They both did a lot of dodging.
Yeah.
But
well, the questions were phrased in very specific ways that it's like, you're just trying to get me to say a yes or no thing here. And the question overall is way more nuanced than that. But yeah, starting things off with,
I think this question you can definitely answer with a yes or no.
But the starting off with this and then the border crisis was just allowed both of them to be like, look how conservative I can be.
Yeah. So yeah, Walls dodged the question, but he didn't say that he didn't support it. So cool.
Yeah.
They're mostly on the same page here, but one side is more openly bloodthirsty about it.
That's true.
It's all rhetorical.
Similarly, the topic of immigration is one where the MAGA side of is, of course, in straight up fascist territory. As I said earlier, we can solve the housing crisis by inventing these things called concentration camps, where we then move people out of the country. So yeah, they blamed all of the nation's ills, from crime to housing to school shootings to illegal drugs, on illegal immigration. While the Dems correctly point out that Trump's rhetoric on the topic is extreme, while failing to also point out that it's mostly built on lies. You can make the case that illegal immigration is bad, but it's absurd to blame all of America's problems on a group of people that make up less than 0.5% of the total population. So it's frustrating that the Dems act like the GOP are right about the urgency of this issue, just wrong about the rhetoric.
It's stupid. Yeah. They've conceded most of it, except the being mean part.
Like with drugs, for example, most of the fentanyl entering the U.S. illegally is transported by U.S. citizens.
Some of them are cops.
In a similar vein, Vance tried to make a connection between his mom's drug addiction and illegal drug smuggling, despite the fact that his mom stole all her drugs from her job as a nurse. And the opioid crisis was started and fulfilled by a good old-fashioned American company.
A private American company. But yeah, you wouldn't know either of those things from watching the debate, because the moderators weren't going to check them on it. Walls wasn't going to check them on it. It is understood by both sides that yes, the immigrants are bringing crime, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing gangs. It's just, what we disagree on is what to do about it, which I fucking hate this. It sucks. Again, illegal immigrants make up such a tiny portion of the population that the way people talk about this, I have to conclude that they are including legal immigrants in with they're all putting them all in the same basket, which is fucking troubling.
Yeah, because a lot of MAGA people, they can tell if someone's illegal just by looking at them, and that's called racism.
Yeah. So JD Vance, he tried to pivot from the whole Haitians eating cats and dogs hysteria that he personally spread, which has no basis in reality, to a slightly more toned down version that was basically, well, no, they're not eating the pets, but illegal immigrants are still responsible for everything wrong in Springfield, Ohio, which resulted in one of the more interesting moments of the debate.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process.
You weren't supposed to fact check my lies. Anyway.
They really screwed up there. They needed to put better people on that because be fast with cutting off their mics.
The only other moments that weren't boring as shit, aside from when Tim Walz flubbed and accidentally said that he is friends with school shooters.
What a flub.
I've become friends with school shooters.
What a gaffe.
Was towards the end of the debate.
He said, what now?
When the topic of January 6th and Trump's refusal to concede the 2020 election came up. Like with climate change, this was Vance doing everything he could to avoid actually directly answering the questions, but what he said still speaks volumes.
It's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country.
This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
Also, yes, pivoting from a lot of that into, well, you know, there's a lot of censorship on Facebook, and him specifically saying that.
Like I said in my video last night, childish. This is childish. These are grown men acting like children on the playground, yelling insults at one another.